for it, and now K-Smell Records is back with a 5-album set devoted to 5 uncredible artists. Yes, that's right, one whole LP apiece devoted to the legends of rock and roll. Have a party with all-time tolerated bands, like the Beached Whales.
I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California girls.
That's right, Calcutta Girls, Shot Down, Worry Baby, Barbara Rand, and many others. And whether you order now or not, we'll still include Hit Me Rhonda.
Help me Rhonda, 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 help.
Also in this set, the dregs of Rod Stewart. Yes, dirges like Ellie Mae, Street Sweepin' Man, You'll Wear a Bell, and Reason to Delete, all in one plain brown paper package.
Still I look to find a reason to believe someone like you.
But we can't stop the music there. Shake your bun buns to the complete works of The Village Peephole. Yes, Mucho Men, I Am What I Am, Into Gravy, and the impossible Y.R.U.Straight.
It's fun to stay at the YMCA. It's fun to stay at the YMCA.
Also including complete LPs from Billy Joe and Inglewood Crack, chart droppers like Buckshot and Water Slide.
Because you had to be a big shot, did ya? You had to open up your mouth. You had to be a big.
And I saw my reflection in a snow-covered hill till the landslide brought me down.
Just take our word for it. 5 artists on 5 LPs, pressed on our new patented pseudo-groove vinyl. Send cash and money order to order the leg ends of rock and roll. Please send cash, money order, and credit card to the leg ends of rock and roll, care of KLAK, Cash Box 1564, Worms, Nebraska 90125. To express delivery, lie on your back, raise and spread your legs, and yell, "You bastard! I should have never married you! Where's that damn epidural?"
Drive like a nation, have fun, 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 till her daddy takes a T-bird away. Fun, 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 till her daddy takes a T-bird away.
And welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that's
Always a woman to me.
whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Anyway, today marks our 10th installment of Record Ripoffs, and in tribute, I've got a bunch of tribute albums lined up for you here today. I've got 5 albums to go over, and these really run the gamut from some of the best or least worst ones, at least, that I've ever covered, on down to some of the all-time worst, ones that I think are going to become kind of infamous. So, true to archive form, let's start with one of those ones that I think might become kind of infamous. So, before I left Colorado a couple years ago, a few months before I left, I was at a used record store one day, and I picked up 2 albums, both Record Ripoffs candidates, both tribute albums, and strangely enough, today's first 2 albums. But one of those was this still sealed 8-track, and I knew I had to pick that one up, because it comes to us from the same folks that gave us that Simon and Garfunkel tape a few years ago. And that company would be SAM, or Sound Alike Music. And if you thought the Simon and Garfunkel tape had some quality control issues, you ain't heard nothing yet. So anyway, today's first album is Shawn Hill Sings the Best of Rod Stewart. Best of as of 1974 anyway. Now, despite this tape being new old stock, the foil splice, true to form, had fallen off at some point, and the foam pressure pad had rotted away, so of course I got the pleasure of having to do a little surgery on this thing. And when I finally stuck it in the machine, I had one of my little, I think I screwed something up moments. Because the song was already playing, and there was a nasty glitch at the beginning of it as well. But then I remembered I didn't cut any tape, and the splice that I used was the same length as the old one, so that just scratches the surface of this one. And then I realized very quickly that I could tell the sound was distorted, but I couldn't quite figure out why initially. But after about a minute or so, I realized that the recording levels on the tape were way too hot, to the point where the line out, just out the back of the 8-track deck, couldn't handle it. And I should note that I tested a bunch of my regular major label 8-tracks as well, and they were all fine, so it's definitely something with the tape. So for today, I had to run the sound out of the headphone jack using a Y cable, and I had to turn the volume way down on the 8-track deck, and I had to turn the bass down a bit too, just because it was really overwhelming. And I haven't even mentioned the music. Now, before we begin, I should note that this is probably the last time you're ever going to see my Montgomery Ward 8-track deck in action. I think a Viking funeral might have been more dignified.
If I listened long enough till I'd find a way to believe that it's all true. Someone like you isn't hard to live with somebody else. 'Cause you're sleeping on the top and simply the place must be like
All right, let's take a look at that other album that I picked up on that same day at that same record store. And we're going to go in the opposite direction for this one. This is easily one of the best knockoffs I've ever heard, if not the best. Granted, I might be being a little backhanded when I say that because the artist in question is The Village People. And I just never learned to like The Village People. I mean, I'd like to think I have a good sense for camp and all, but really they would just beat you over the head with their shtick, and I always found their music to be so one note that I could never get into them. But my opinions of the real group aside, let's take a look at Sounds Like the Village People by way of Repeat Offender's Mirror Image. And yeah, that is supposed to be a bicep. But anyway, you can probably see the track list from where I've got the cover sitting here. That's not just a sampling. That is the whole record. There's only 4 tracks on here. But in this case, that's kind of appropriate, I guess, because if you've ever encountered a non-greatest hits Village People album, they tended to be pretty short affairs. I mean, their debut album only clocks in at something like 21 minutes. I think it might actually be the shortest debut album of all time. But anyway, this does have all 3 of the Village People's US top 40 singles here. But that 4th cut is actually 2 songs, but it's one of those deals where you just can't play them apart. And they obviously realized that here, so it's just indexed as 1 track. But I had never heard that one before. And after hearing it here, I went and streamed the real thing, and I actually liked the knockoff better. I actually thought the performance was a little tighter, the production was a little better, the vocal was a little better. So yeah, it's a definite rarity. Now, as for the hits, really only YMCA seemed to fall short of the real thing. But funnily enough, whoever owned this record really liked YMCA because it is disproportionately worn out compared to the rest of the record.
Young man, there's no need to feel down. I said, young man, take yourself off the ground. I said, young man, 'cause you knew in this town there's no need to be unhappy. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. They have everything for you men to enjoy. You can hang out with all the boys. Wanna feel my body, yeah, yeah. Wanna feel my body, yeah, yeah. Want to touch my macho, macho man. I got to feel macho. Hey, baby. Take my mustache. Ooh. Put some on the streets too. Freedom in the night, yeah. Searching for what we call treasure. San Francisco. What about you, baby? Hey, you got me. Take a bus, a train, or a plane to Hollywood. Go there and then change your name. You dye your hair out there. It's part of the game. You're gonna be a star, a big star. Everybody is a star in Hollywood. All right. Everybody is a star in Hollywood. Well, yeah. Hollywood. Hollywood. Come on. Come on.
In the Navy,
She'll sail the 7 seas.
in the Navy,
She can put your mind at ease.
in the Navy.
Come on now, people, make a stand.
Save for the Village People, today's knockoffs all concern artists that are pretty deep-rooted with me. These are all artists that they were some of the first albums I ever owned and or were just simply some of the first artists I ever heard. And this next album is from, at least as far as the original artist goes, one of the very first artists I ever heard, and that was Billy Joel. And so a few years back, a viewer offered me his, as it turned out, rather water-damaged and warped copy of the Billy Joel songbook. I accepted it. And it's a mixed bag. Musically, it's probably one of the better knockoffs I've ever covered, although the intro to New York State of Mind seems to be stuck in Missouri somewhere. But it's the vocals that sink this one. And it's not that the singer is off-key or anything, it's just that we tend to equate Billy Joel with New York. Well, this guy is definitely more Minneapolis than Manhattan. But then again, Pickwick was based out of Minneapolis at the time, so I guess it's appropriate. But anyway, this thing was kind of premature. This only covers from Piano Man up to 52nd Street, so 1973 to 78. And I guess Billy Joel could have filled up an entire LP with just his hits at this point, but these guys seem to have some kind of agenda. They were really pushing the deep cuts here. So I hope you're not too fond of Moving Out, or Only the Good Die Young, or Honesty, because none of them are here. But the real fatal flaw to this logic is that if you wanted to hear a real obscurity like Souvenir, you were probably already listening to full-blown, regular, individual Billy Joel albums.
Got a call from an old friend. We used to be real close. Said he couldn't go on the American way. I don't need you to worry for me, 'cause I'm alright. Go ahead with your own life, leave me alone. I never said you had to offer me a second chance. Don't go changing to try and please me. You've never let me down before. I took the good times, I'll take the bad times. I'll take you just the way you are. Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight, and you've got us feeling alright. Seen all the movie stars in their fancy cars and their limousines. Been high in the Rockies, under the evergreens. I don't have any reasons, I've left them all behind. I'm in a New York state of mind. Well, you went uptown riding in your limousine in your fine Park Avenue clothes. Go on and cry in your coffee, but don't come bitching to me. Because you had to be a big shot, did ya? You had to open up your mouth. You had to be a big shot, did ya? All your friends were
Like that Billy Joel knockoff, this next album is also a Pickwick special. It's also from the late 70s, and is also arguably a bit premature. But there is one real difference here, and that would be that this band had been kicking around since 1967. It just took them until 1975 to start racking up some real full-blown pop hits, here in the States at least. And that band would be Fleetwood Mac. And I've got another songbook to cover here. The Fleetwood Mac Songbook by Dancer's Image. And whether you're into Fleetwood Mac or not, you got to admit that by 1978, they had quite a big back catalog. And they'd also been through a ton of personnel changes too. But this album manages to take that big, nice back catalog and boil it down to just the group's then two most recent albums, and manages to eliminate one of the group's, at the time, 3 singer-songwriters from the equation completely. I hope you're not too fond of Lindsey Buckingham. But anyway, they take some real liberties with the songs here. The real big one being the song Landslide. Not a pop hit, but a definite rock radio favorite. And the original version of that is pretty sparse. It's just a few guitar parts and a vocal. Well, here they give it a truly horrid full band arrangement. But conversely, elsewhere on the album, they take some pretty well-produced tracks and boil them down to just mediocre bar band rock, complete with some drifting tempos, botched lyrics, and there's also only one vocalist here, and she is frequently singing well below her range. Now, on a technical level, this thing's got plenty of problems, but the big one is a little bit of a boo-boo in the track list. And this, I don't know if you can read it, but it is supposed to have the song Warm Ways on it. It is missing from the cassette version. Now, I don't have the vinyl version of this to compare to, but it is not here. But we do get to hear that sweet, sweet version of Landslide twice.
Like a heartbeat driving mad in the stillness of the memory of what you had. Thunder only happens when it's raining, and players only love you when they're playing. You can't take me to the paradise, and then again you could be cold as ice. I'm over my head, oh, but it sure feels nice. And I saw my reflection in a snow-covered hill till the landslide brought me down. Oh, I'm getting older too. Rihanna rings like a bell through the night. Wouldn't you love to love her?
Today's last album is the only specific knockoff album that I've ever gotten multiple requests to cover. And so I found my copy of this one in, of all places, an antique store, probably about 1.5 years ago. And I'd already gotten a couple requests for it, so I'd heard of it. And I, of course, bought the thing, took it straight home, threw it on the turntable, and I realized very quickly why I was getting requests for this one. While this one doesn't have the technical problems that's plagued so many of today's other albums, the performance end of things way more than makes up for that. So with that, today's final album is The Surfsiders Sing the Beach Boys Songbook in stereo. And Lord have mercy on anyone with a lisp that tries to read that title. But anyway, I think this is from 1965. The most recent song on here is California Girls, so we're right on that border of the early girls, cars, surfing ad nauseum Beach Boys to the more arty experimental stuff like Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains and all that. But I guess it's appropriate just because this is also that period in time where I think surf music was kind of at the end of its line. And I'd be willing to bet that the Surfsiders were a real teenage surf rock group. Obviously, I can't prove it, but they sure sound it. Musically, they are your average teenage 60s surf rock group. But vocally, well, let me put it this way. Have you ever wanted to hear Little Deuce Coupe reimagined as a slightly out-of-tune toothpaste jingle? Anyway, one more point of business here. My copy of this album once belonged to D.B., and I can't help but wonder if that wasn't D.B. Cooper, and if this album isn't what drove him to hijacking that plane. It would explain a lot, though.
Well, East Coast girls are hip, I really dig those styles they wear. And the Southern girls, with the way they talk, they knock me out when I'm down there. Wish they all could be California girls. I wish they all could be California girls. She's my little deuce scoop. You don't know what I got. You don't know what I got.
She's got a competition clutch, she will go on the floor, yeah. She purrs like a kitten till the big fights roar. And if that ain't enough to make you flip your wig, there's one more thing I got to tell Slip Daddy, and
She's my little deuce scoop. You don't know what I got. You don't know what I got. You don't know what I got.
she's real fine, my
409.
She's real fine, my
409, my 409.
Well, I save my pennies and I save my dimes.
Giddy up, 409.
My four-speed dual quad posi traction 409.
409, 409, 409,
Giddy up,
409, giddy up, 409, 409, 409, giddy up, 409.
Well, she got her daddy's car and she cruised through the hamlet to stand loud. Seems she forgot all about the library like she told her old man now. And you have
Fun, 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 till her daddy takes her T-bird away. Fun, 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 till her daddy takes her T-bird away.
well, since she put me down, I've been out doing in my head. Come in late at night and in the morning I just lay in bed. Well, Rhonda, you caught my eye.
Caught my
Why? You gotta help me, Rhonda, help me get right of my heart. I get around, round, round, I get around. From town to town, round, 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 I get around. Get around, round, round, I get around. Real good friend. Get around, round, round, I get around. I get around.
Well, that's it for today's archive. Join us next time when the archive's endless summer, continues.
From the early morning till the settle of the night, anytime you're surfing up, the time is right. And when the surf is down, say it gets late, we'll do the surfer stuff because it's the latest and great.
Surfing is the only light, the only way for me. Now surf, surf with me. Surfing is the only light, the only way for me. Now come on, pretty baby, and surf with me. Yeah. Come on, pretty baby, and surf with me. Yeah. Come on, pretty baby, and surf with me.
It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. The regular crowd shovels in.